My father often told me when I was just a lad, the sailor's life was very hard, the food was always bad. But now I've joined the Navy, I'm abroad a man o' war, and now I've found a sailor, ain't a sailor anymore. Don't haul on the rope, don't climb up the mast. If you see a sailing ship, it might be your last. Just get your civvies ready for another run ashore. A sailor ain't a sailor, ain't a sailor anymore.
Hello and welcome to The Bad Spot and part 8 of the Last Starmarked, my Sundered Isles campaign. At the top of the episode you will have heard an excerpt from the last shanty read by a ghost of Eli, who is an award-winning actual play producer, post-production director, game developer, writer and creative audio pro, and you will find a link to all their stuff down below. And whilst I'm thanking them, I just want to give a shout out to everyone who recorded sea shanties for me this season. These delightful people did excellent work, and for some of them it was their very first paid voice acting gig, so that's pretty cool, I think. I'm currently casting for the second part of this run, so if you know anyone out there who'd like a few bucks for recording a little bit of a shanty, then get in touch. Again, the links to do that are in the down belows. And whilst you're rummaging around down there, why don't you leave a like, subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. These things are really important for supporting the channel and supporting what I do, and if you really want to support the channel, then why not check out the Bad Spot Patreon. There you'll get early, ad-free access to all episodes, exclusive behind the scenes content, and your name on screen like these lovely people. Last time out, Gideon awoke in a safe house, rested and recovered in an area of Crown Falls known as the Squire's Quarter. Finn tells him that they have business to attend to pertaining to the Crown of Tides, business they must deal with alone. Finn leaves Gideon under strict instructions not to leave the safe house, but within literally minutes, Gideon ignores that and finds a tavern on the street below called the Duck and Barrow. With Lorenzo making Gideon feel guilty for blowing off steam and disobeying Finn, Gideon tries to at least learn something about the area and the situation in Crown Falls. Starting a raucous drinking game with some local dock workers and stevedores, he learns that the docks where he had previously witnessed the submersible under scaffolding are currently closed and off limits. They are under military jurisdiction under the auspices of someone known as Captain Fletcher, due to wealthy buyers in town to do business on the docks. Now Gideon suspects that this business must be for the submersible, and when he learns that the sale of said submersible has been delayed by 5 days, he figures out that Felicity must be the missing piece of the sale, and specifically the vial of blue flame which must power some part of the craft which is useless without it. This information proves invaluable, but there is more. Gideon also learns that the Circle of Silent Hands, the organisation of artificers from whom Felicity stole the blue flame at Whitlock Manor, have the adjacent quarter on lockdown as they search for her. With these promising leads, Gideon leaves the Duck and Barrow and returns to the safe house, which he finds deserted. Deserted save for a shadowy figure lurking on the balcony outside. When Gideon confronts them, the figure's form shifts and phases briefly before turning into a cloud of screeching bats that disappears into the night. So that was a fairly spooky and mysterious end to the last episode. Lots of questions, and it feels like we're kind of vaguely getting close to some answers. But before we get into that, let's check in on our progress. Now, initially, I thought we didn't have any additional progress to mark here, but the more I have thought about it, the appearance of the figure on the balcony, I think, means something. And it means something because of what happened in the live episode that I recorded at the UK Game Expo, which, depending on when you're watching this, may already be out, or it's out next. But yeah, anyway, what happened in that, I think, really does matter. The appearance of that figure means something. But to what? It doesn't tie into our vow with Felicity. But the more this keeps cropping up, the more I want it to tie into our background vow. Gideon has a suspicion of what the appearance of this figure means, even if I, as a player, don't quite have it all worked out yet. But shut up. I think this counts as progress, specifically gaining meaningful insight. So I'm having that. We're up to 1 out of 10 on our background vow. And I'm aware that I keep doing this, right? I keep saying things count as meaningful insight, but I don't tell you what they mean. And I'm fully aware I'm doing this, and I hope you will indulge me as I do, because it's just that I want to flag in-game that these things are meaningful without me fully knowing exactly what they mean and why they're meaningful. Like, I'm sketching in these details, like the dream about the woman in the lighthouse, the whisper in the dark and the glowing shape of the tattoo under the water, and now this figure that appeared and then disappeared in a cloud of bats. All of these things I am saying are meaningful to Gideon, and specifically to his background vow to lift the family curse, and you're all just going to have to kind of trust me to make that happen. And I know that I have let some of you down before, but I think I can kind of see some dots kind of forming in this swirling nebula, and I think I can join them together. But anyway, that is for future me as a problem to have. But yeah, without any further ado, let's begin.
I told you not to leave.
Gideon turns to see Finn behind him, still with the head of the King of Tides, and presumably the crown attached to it, wrapped in that cloak thrown over their shoulder. They are once again wearing that distinct, unusual sharkskin armour and that stingray mask. They also look, for the first time since Gideon met them anyway, worried. And he doesn't know if Finn saw the figure on the balcony or how long they'd been standing there. But Gideon feels like Finn is keeping something big buttoned up. And he kind of laughs it off and says, "You had a late night guest, but they turned into a cloud of bats before I could get a name. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about." And the two of them stand in this kind of tense silence, and Lorenzo is kind of anxiously flicking his little eyes between the two of them. Finn finally breaks it and says,
I fear we are both in grave danger.
I have started to get that impression.
I am a keeper of the Terrian flame.
Should I be impressed or scared?
We are few in number. We are sworn to protect and recover artifacts belonging to the people you know as the Sunken.
And Finn gestures to the bundle over their shoulder, the cloak that holds the head and the crown, and continues.
I have been searching for this piece for years. You have seen but a glimpse of what I have had to go through to acquire it.
It's yours now. What next? A coronation?
It must be returned to its rightful place. On Navini.
And Gideon hears that name and sort of smirks and says, "I wish you nothing but the best of luck." And Finn doesn't react to that at all. And Gideon's like, "Oh, you're serious? Of course you are."
I must reach the expedition leaving the docks this evening.
And this is the expedition we rolled up last time. The one the Oracle said a vital expedition needs an escort. So there is this expedition, and it is leaving for Navini, which, if we consult our map, is this island over here in the northwest of the Ember Strait. We did roll up some details about it, but nothing beyond the fact that it was a desolate place scattered with ancient ruins. But we're about to get a little more. And Gideon says, look, expeditions to Navini don't come back. If you think I am going to accompany you to certain death, I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint you. Plus, it seems there's another interested party. And he gestures to the night sky and the bats that have kind of disappeared. Finn looks up and says,
Their power is diminished since they lost possession of the crown.
And Gideon kind of nods incredulously. I think if he could do the kind of Shawjan meme, he probably would. And he says, still, you want to take a powerful relic across perilous waters to an island no one has ever returned from and have night ships trailing in your wake? Like I say, I wish you the best of luck.
I do not expect you to come with me, but I need your help. The expedition leaving tonight is organised by the Academy.
So
I need credentials.
I'm not a forger.
But you are a thief.
Finn does have him there. That is true. But Gideon comes back with, what's in it for me? And Finn says,
You need to navigate the city, move between the walls. Your quarry is here. I can get you to her.
And Gideon is exasperated because he knows that Finn is right. Like, he knows that he can't get to Felicity without them, and navigating Crown Falls is going to be impossible without Finn's kind of knowledge of the place. And this is just going to have to be the way it happens. If he can get Finn these credentials, then he trusts them that, like, they will protect him and get him to Felicity. Because, you know, we did make this connection with Finn. There is this element of trust there. But yeah, I think we had that complication, didn't we? And this is very much it, I think. But Gideon is nearly 100% sure that Felicity is in the next quarter. If he can just do this thing for Finn, get them the credentials they need, then he's going to be pretty close to the end of his goal. So he thinks it over. And as he looks at Finn, Finn is already holding out their hatchet to Gideon, who sort of sighs, but knows it has to be done. And he reaches out his hand and puts his palm flat on the blade. And we're going to swear another iron vow. The move says, when you swear to complete a quest, write your vow and give it a rank. Then roll plus heart. If you swear this vow's for connection, add +1. And this is going to be just get Finn on the boat. And it's going to be dangerous. So 2 boxes every time we mark progress. Now, Finn is a connection, so we do get +1. So let's swear an iron vow, rolling plus heart. A strong hit. On a strong hit, you are emboldened, and it is clear what you must do next. Take +2 momentum, which bumps our momentum up to 8. And also, I think we get to make the connection move, develop your relationship, which says when you reinforce your relationship with a connection by doing any of the following, and there's a list here, but one of them is swearing a vow to undertake a perilous quest in their service. You may mark progress per the rank of that connection. So our connection with Finn goes up to 3 out of 10. Okay, so Gideon is thinking fast, and a plan is already starting to crystallize in his head. And the last few pieces of this kind of particular puzzle are kind of slowly falling into place. Gideon says, "The expedition leaves tonight." Finn nods. "You know the docks are under military control." Finn nods again. "Well, you're going to need one hell of a distraction." And then we smash cut once again to the bar of the Duck and Barrow. It is later in the evening. It is busier. Everyone's a little more drunk. The songs have gotten a little louder and the content a little saucier. Gideon enters, Lorenzo perched on his shoulder, and the dock workers notice him and give him a rousing cheer as he walks in. And he says, "Okay, hands up who wants to take back control of the docks." And hands and beer and furniture go flying into the air as the Duck and Barrow erupts. Okay, so this isn't a full-blooded, fully formed uprising just yet. This will have to be a roll, as much as I would like it for Gideon's sheer personal magnetism to just unlock any door I want to. Sadly, it cannot. So we are going to have to make a move, and that move is Compel, which says when you try to persuade someone or make them an offer, envision your approach and roll. So we're definitely going to charm, pacify, and encourage. So we'll be rolling plus heart, and I don't think we're lying here, even though there is a bit of deception at play. So sadly, I don't think we can use our scoundrel asset to make this a kind of super juiced up move, which is a real shame. So let's compel. Rolling plus heart. Ooh, a strong hit with a match. And that makes it even more of a shame that we couldn't use our scoundrel asset, because that fires all sorts of nonsense off whenever you roll a match. But hey-ho, it wasn't appropriate, so we didn't do it. So the move says, on a strong hit, they'll do what you want or agree to your conditions. Take +1 momentum. So that takes us up to 9, and worryingly that is 2 strong hits right off the bat. So this episode is off to a flyer. The scales of justice definitely won't tip back in the other way later on, I'm sure. So I think I won't kind of get into the role play of this scene of Gideon convincing everyone. I think we kind of see it play out in a montage of Gideon galvanizing the room and kind of building on that rapport he has with the downtrodden workers of Crown Falls, and people are just like enraptured by his rhetoric, which he is just pulling out of the air. And he just ends this impassioned speech with, "Tonight you take back what's yours," and the pub goes fucking wild, and Gideon is hoisted into the air like some champion of the people. And I guess in a sense he is. He wants this for the workers deep down somewhere. He also has kind of an ulterior motive. He has his own reasons for doing this. But I think he also knows it's right. Would he have done this without needing something in return? Probably not. But you know, it is what it is. Anyway, I think this is good. And I think this definitely also counts as progress. If we look at Reach a Milestone, it says, when you make headway in your quest by doing any of the following, one of the things is earning vital support. So yes, we do get to mark progress as per the rank of the vow, because getting the dock workers on side is definitely earning vital support. So get Finn on the boat is up to 2 out of 10, which is a great start. And whilst I think about it, I wonder whether causing somewhat of a ruckus at the docks, where we actually think Felicity might be heading towards, definitely if she's involved in the sale of that submersible, then I guess that's progress 2 on the vow to find Felicity Devereaux. So I'm going to bump that up to 6 out of 10 because, like, we know this riot, this uprising or whatever it is going to happen. So I think knowing that puts us in a better position to navigate than her. So if she does head to the docks, which we're pretty sure she will be on the defensive, on the back foot, less prepared than us anyway. That is my roundabout thinking that makes literally no sense, but shut up, I'm having it. So the workers in the Duck and Barrow all spill out onto the streets to kind of organise and rally more bodies to their cause. And Gideon also kind of steps out into the street beaming with kind of pride that he's done this. And he sees Finn kind of tucked away down an alleyway, waiting for them in the shadows. Actually, before I forget, it's nighttime now, isn't it? And we are out and about. So let's check in on the twin fates. Which moon is rising this evening? Okay, it's Cinder. It isn't full, but it's full-ish. Certainly full enough to influence things down here. It says in the book, Cinder is hot, aggressive, passionate, resolute, and physical. So things could get a little spicy on the streets of Crown Falls. We're not in Falls Rest. I nearly said Falls Rest, but it's Crown Falls. They've got very similar names. Also, like side point, where I grew up, there was a swimming pool called Crown Pools, and this has caused me no end of confusion. But this is nonsense. I'll cut this out. So Finn is going to guide us to the next quarter, where we know the Circle of Silent Hands are looking Felicity, and I'm not going to make a thing out of this. We'll use the sewers again. But firstly, I want to establish something about what this quarter is. We kind of brought a little bit of detail to where we are now, which is the Squire's Quarter. And I've been thinking about what would be next door. And I have decided, for reasons I can only describe as it sounded cool, that beyond the wall, we will find Felicity on the run in the Hangman's Quarter. Now, I haven't come up with anything else other than that name. We know that we have to get somewhere and find credentials for a voyage that Finn wants to go on. But that is it. So I was wondering whether we should roll up some details. Now, we already used the settlement first look oracles to define Crown Falls in general. So I'm not going to use those. But recently, me and Steve Morrison of the Errant Adventures podcast, we do an occasional podcast on this channel together called the Ironsworn guys. And in the last episode, we kind of talked about the thrill of starting an Ironsworn game using only a couple of prompts from the core oracles, just 2 words that you have to interpret. And that conversation made me pretty nostalgic. So I think I'm going to do that now. I'm going to hit the core oracles a couple of times and see what it throws up for us to interpret. So 61 is navigation, and 17 is confinement. So those are pretty disparate. But I wonder if instead of the 2 together meaning something, they are telling us 2 different things about the Hangman's Quarter. Now, if we work backwards from the name, Hangman, and we have confinement, I wonder if it makes sense that there is a prison in this quarter. I think we said last episode, or the episode before, maybe, that Crown Falls has this kind of is this concentric layout, right? And it's kind of portioned into these 4 quarters. But at the center, we said, as almost like the bullseye was this huge keep, this overbearing keep. I wonder in the Hangman's Quarter of this place, the portion of the keep that's in the Hangman's Quarter is a jail, like a high security prison. And I think that makes sense, and I quite like that. Now, the navigation part, Finn said the expedition was being led by the Academy. Now, that's obviously some academic institution. No shit, it's called the Academy. And I'm not particularly interested in defining that. But Finn said we need to steal some credentials, right? Now, I wonder if there is a place somewhere in the Hangman's Quarter where we will find a building belonging to this academy, like an administrative office or something, where all of these expeditions are organized and, you know, the bureaucracy of it is done, like the paperwork. And tonight, the navigators of this exhibition, let's say, they're all collecting their credentials and all their like official business that they need before they board and depart. And that's where we need to go. We need to go to this kind of office building, this administrative building. That's where Gideon needs to infiltrate, and that is where he will need to steal Finn's credentials from. So, okay, that's something. We're going to infiltrate the academy, get Finn the credentials, then find Felicity before she can reach the docks and complete the deal for a submarine, all whilst there is a worker uprising causing chaos and also possibly vampires after us. This sounds like a good time, right? I mean, in terms of like the goal, we have a clear kind of linear path. How we're going to do it, I don't know, but we're doing it. So we cut to a manhole cover amongst the cobblestones of a back alley. It lifts slightly and then twists and then is pushed aside with a noisy metallic clank. And after a second, Lorenzo's little monkey head pops out, checking that the coast is clear. Satisfied there is no one around, he shrieks back down into the darkness and he hops out. He's followed quickly by Finn and then Gideon, who replaces the manhole cover, dragging the heavy metallic disc noisily across the cobblestones. The trio creep to the end of the alleyway, shrouded in shadow, and the street that this leads to is much like all the streets in Crown Falls, much like all the streets in the Squire's Quarter. They are drab grey buildings that line drab grey streets. The Hangman's Quarter, however, has one marked difference. It is deathly quiet. There are no taverns with noisy revellers inside. There is no one out wandering the streets. It is eerily still. And it doesn't take too long to find out why. Finn motions for them all to kind of press against the wall and hide themselves. And they wait, and they wait, until finally someone passes. Now Gideon recognises the aesthetic of these people immediately and knows who they are. Whilst they don't wear the full robes as the emissary and the apprentice that he saw murdered at Whitlock Manor, there are 4 people dressed in a very similar style. The style of the Circle of Silent Hands, complete with clockwork adornments. These people, though, look different. They look dressed for action. They look dressed for violence. They are heavy set and menacing. The Circle of Silent Hands are here, and they are here in force. These people are known as Devotants. Each of them carries a truly frightening looking weapon. One has what looks like a 2-handed warhammer, but the head is a whole anvil. One carries a set of twin sickles, and the others have heavy crossbows with jagged, barbed bolts locked and loaded. They are clearly a formidable force. But the Devotants are not the most disturbing aspect of this patrol. Following just behind them is a large metal construct, standing 3 meters high at the shoulder. A mighty automaton. Now, we did establish in session 0 that these exist, and I think now's a good time to introduce them. This is huge. It's a barrel-chested thing with these stilt-like kind of piston legs that lead to this narrow torso. Through the ribs that it has, you can see the clockwork gears turning that glow with this eerie, spectral, pale blue light. The head, such as it is basically just a flat disc, and it slowly rotates. There are no eyes as such, but the same pale blue light leaks out of these narrow slits that run all around the circumference. But most chilling of all is that its arms aren't arms. They are huge blades. They are scythe-like blades. This is a machine built to deal death. And as Gideon, Finn and Lorenzo stand kind of open-mouthed watching this, kind of holding their collective breath to stay as quiet as possible, there is suddenly a huge smash as a person is thrown through the window of the building on the opposite side of the street. Glass and wood and splinters scatter over the cobblestones as this person lands in a crumpled heap. They are followed out of the building by another devotant, armed with heavy chains wrapped around their arms. The rest of the patrol gather around the body, and the automaton moves in, its bladed arms poised. One of the devotants rolls the body over. It's a woman who's in her early 30s, red-haired. Gideon leans forward expectantly, trying to see. The devotants pull back her shawl to look at her arms. Gideon is straining. The patrol are disappointed that this woman is merely flesh and blood and not the partly mechanical woman they seek. After a moment, they continue on their way, leaving the barely breathing woman on the ground. After the coast is clear, what we can presume is the woman's family come into the street and drag her back inside. Gideon says, "I hate to sound heartless, but at least this means they aren't looking for us." And Lorenzo gives him a look, and he's like, "What? I'm right." Does this count as progress? Does learning that the Circle of Silent Hands have not yet located Felicity count as gaining valuable insight? I think it just might. So, and also I want to give myself a break because this is a really hard vow that's taken ages to mark progress on. So we're up to 6.5 out of 10. So now we need to get to the Academy. And I know I said a matter of moments ago that I didn't want to define this organization in any way. But since I mentioned it, what I think is a deeply stupid, very dumb idea has formed in my head. It doesn't really mean anything, and it doesn't make any sense, but I'm doing it anyway. I have decided that this academy that we have to infiltrate is called the Griffin Academy, which, like I said, makes no sense and is stupid, but I have decided to do it for all you bad spot aficionados out there, even though it's dumb. It doesn't make sense. We now need to go to the Griffin Academy and infiltrate it. And Finn knows where it is, and I think we get there easily. And even if we have to kind of move like discreetly through the back alleys and kind of cut throughs at the Hangman's Quarter, we get there kind of with no trouble. And Finn leads them up some steps and to a bridge that arches over one of the streets. And from here, they can see this building, the Griffin Academy building, which inside of which we'll kind of find what we're looking for, which is an office or something. And I think this building really stands out in a row of slate grey buildings, like all the other buildings in this godforsaken city. This one is different. It's built in a completely different style. It's got like these pillars on the front, and there's this kind of ornate detailing and stonework that kind of completely covers the exterior. And it's 5 stories high. And I think that on the kind of the highest story, there is this big circular glass window, like stained glass window, and it depicts the insignia of a griffin kind of rearing back up onto its hind legs. And Gideon says, "Okay, what's the plan?"
"You're the thief."
I was afraid you were going to say that. and we need to see what's what. So let's formulate a plan and see what options we have available. And I suppose we are infiltrating, aren't we? So we need to kind of look for a weak spot in the building, or kind of like a way in that we can utilize. So this is a move, and that move is secure an advantage, which says when you assess a situation, make preparations or attempt to gain leverage, envision your action and roll. And I think this is definitely with expertise, focus, or observation, because we are looking for an angle, looking for a way to get inside. So let's roll to secure an advantage plus wits. Okay, a weak hit. I don't mind that. We get to choose one of the following. We can either take +2 momentum or +1 on our next move. And that's fine. We won't take the momentum because we're very nearly at full. So we'll just take the +1 on the next move. And yeah, like I said, we're looking to infiltrate this building. So we are looking for like a place we can break into. And Gideon is sizing this up and looking for places where a good bit of B&E, a bit of breaking and entering can take place. And he notices that there is this kind of side balcony on the second floor, and there's like a little narrow alleyway that runs below it. And maybe if he gets down there and kind of clambers up, he can kind of get to the balcony and pick the lock and, jobs are good and you're in. Let's keep it relatively simple. It's also off the street and it's secluded enough that like anyone passing won't notice. I think that's enough of an opening. Let's not make this, infiltrating Fort Knox. So he leaves Finn watching over them, and he and Lorenzo quickly move across the street and into the alleyway. And they do one last check to make sure they're alone, and they both quickly hustle up and onto the balcony. The door is heavy, but there is a nice, fortuitously pickable lock right there. So let's get in. And this is going to be a move, and that move is Face Danger, which says when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. And you could make the case for this being expertise here, I think, to pick this lock, so you could do it plus wits, but I think this is definitely an act of stealth. So let's Face Danger, rolling plus shadow with a +1 from the secure an advantage. Oh, even with the +1, that is a weak hit. It says on a weak hit you succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move -1. Now what can that suffer move possibly be? What would make sense here? Now that is a thinker. I wonder if there's kind of more generally a more interesting complication at play here. There is something that's going on. Like we get through the door, but I think there's something that's going to give us more of a headache. So what if we're not just burgling an office? What if, now I've kind of built this academy up as the Griffin Academy, what if before this expedition sets off, the Griffin Academy is having an exclusive social engagement, sort of this ceremonial thing where they send the brave explorers on their way? And what if that is what we're going to have to infiltrate? We're not just breaking into an empty office and stealing some paperwork. I think it would be funny if, like, Gideon has to kind of navigate another social engagement. We know that's his thing, right? But I think that that's more interesting than just a straight-up burglary. And I think it would be really cool if, like, Gideon is down here kind of delicately, expertly picking this lock, and the door just kind of opens, and one of the party guests, it's not a party, but one of the guests of this thing comes out onto the balcony, and they're hammered, right? And it's this kind of like swaying, ruddy-faced, mustachioed man who conveniently is about Gideon's height. And this person is blind drunk. And whether they have stumbled out here because they were like looking for a toilet or something and got lost, or whether they genuinely needed some fresh air because they were going to bath, who knows? But they are here. Gideon was on his knees, kind of working the lock, whilst Lorenzo was perched on the balcony. And now the door opened. Gideon is kind of pressed up behind it, and now Lorenzo is talking to a drunk man who's kind of just swaying and mumbling, trying to focus on this little monkey. Probably how many monkeys he's seeing or what he's seeing, who knows. And he's kind of gesturing to make some kind of grand point to Lorenzo. And Gideon has already grabbed like a plant pot or half a brick or something, ready to knock this guy out before he just collapses in an unconscious, drunken heap on the floor. And Gideon and Lorenzo share a look as if that was a freebie. And sizing up their relative heights, Gideon and the guy on the floor, Gideon instantly gets to work on disrobing this guy, and the clothes are really refined and formal, and it has that kind of V-shaped Masonic sash that you see in Masonic lodges, I guess. But the sash has these emblems on it. One of them is the Griffin Academy crest, and then there's also another one which is a kind of a crest for something called the Navigator's Lodge, and that is what we are infiltrating. But whilst that complication is now here, we're in. What of the suffer move? Well, I think I'll take a hit to my supply, so we'll bump that down to 4. Now, some of you will know that the Starforged run that I played from this channel's inception in 2021 to earlier this year, some of you will know that recently I put all those episodes, or most of those episodes, up on all the major audio podcasting platforms. And yes, I know that you've been asking me to do that for years, but I did it. And my patrons have been treated to these exclusive little hour-long talk-back commentary videos where every 12 episodes of the original Starforged run, I sit down and I talk to the camera about what the hell I was thinking back then, interesting bits of trivia about it. It's kind of like a little commentary. It's kind of fun. I've really enjoyed revisiting them, and I think people have really enjoyed watching them. Anyway, one thing I noticed about revisiting those early episodes is, in the first half of the first season, I use my supply all the time. But after those kind of first 8, 9, 10 episodes, I just never get back into it. I never use it. I know it is designed to be abstracted, but I just didn't bother with it because it just seemed like the least interesting of all those tracks. It's supposed to generally represent your preparedness or your readiness in a general sense. But I'm actually going to take a hit to my supply here to represent losing something specific, specifically my lockpicking tools. Now, if at some point down the line Gideon resupplies in the future and we go back up to 5, I'll be considered ready. But narratively, I now no longer have these specialist tools, which means that unless in the narrative we go out of our way to replace them, we will always have to think of another solution to a locked door or a locked chest. So as the now unconscious person, we have kind of just stolen the clothes off. As they came out of the door, the sheer force that they pushed the door open with, or the grinding of the kind of the mechanisms of the lock or whatever, have completely wrecked Gideon's tools. And narratively, they're gone. And narratively, it also gives me something in the bank to call on, because if I am after a complication for something down the line as a result of a bad roll, a locked door or a locked chest, or suddenly I will need lockpick tools for, that suddenly becomes more interesting. So that's just a side point. I'm just thinking out loud. So apologies if that was boring. Also, I think that gaining access to this soiree or the whatever this event is, the Navigator's Lodge, definitely counts as progress. So get Finn on the boat is up to 4 out of 10. So this function, it is exclusive, and crucially, it's busy enough for Gideon not to stand out. Not unless he's like cornered and questioned about something like really specific. Like there's enough people in there that he can kind of be a little bit anonymous. There are dozens and dozens of people there, and the room is kind of long, it's large, it's high ceilinged, wood panelled room, and there's all sorts of like ancient maps and charts on the walls, and there are, in these like glass display cases, there are these ancient or antique sextants and telescopes and all other sorts of like navigational equipment. And at the end of the room, there is a lectern where people have been given speeches or are about to give speeches. And that is in front of that large stained glass window that depicts the Griffin Academy insignia. There are servers carrying around drinks on trays, and the room is thick with a fog of cigar smoke and the sounds of backslapping and hearty guffawing as the men and women of the Navigator's Lodge share stories of their voyages and expeditions. This place, this building, this room, it stands in stark contrast to the rest of Crown Falls, which is grey and drab and austere. This place and its people are dripping with wealth and privilege. Gideon takes a drink from the tray of a passing server, and as he sips, says under his breath, "These fucking people." And he starts working his way through the room. He doesn't have a great deal of time, like we are on the clock. He needs to find out where the credentials are, like where they're kept, and how he can get his hands on them. So this is going to be a move, I think, which could be secure an advantage. You could make an argument for that, but I actually think it's going to be gather information, which says, when you search for clues, conduct an investigation, analyse evidence, or do research, roll plus wits. And we will also be using our socialite asset, which says when you make a move using charm, flattery, or seduction, or by navigating elite social circles, add +1. This is definitely an elite social circle, and we are definitely navigating it. So I'm absolutely using that. So let's gather information, rolling plus wits. That's a miss. On a miss, your investigation unearths a dire threat or reveals an unwelcome truth that undermines your quest. Pay the price. Now, we have 9 momentum. Do we want to burn it? I guess the question is, how hard is a miss in this situation? I think because time is of the essence, like the boat leaves imminently, like tonight, we know that Felicity is still out there. The dock workers are... It could well already be rioting and rampaging down there. Like, if they are, how long are they going to last against a town militia? How good is that distraction going to be? I think, as loath as I am to do this, I think I'm going to have to burn the momentum just to get a weak hit. So let's go back down to the reset value of 2 and make this a weak hit, which says, on a weak hit, the information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover, then take +1 momentum. So that momentum instantly bumps back up to 3. Okay, so what's the new insight and how is our quest complicated? So I think at this function, this kind of ceremonial thing, this is where credentials are handed out to the senior crew who are leading the expedition, and I actually think we've missed that happening. I think this went down like just before we arrived, and I actually think it's interesting if the people who are going on this expedition have been selected, and they are going to Navini, and that place is, and I don't want to throw the word cursed around, but it sounds pretty fucking cursed, right? Voyages that go there don't come back. That is something that is accepted as fact to the degree that Gideon knows it. So I think that anyone who's been selected, like, to lead this expedition, like, their names were announced moments before we arrived, and they're pretty unlucky. And I think maybe the person whose outfit we stole like maybe the reason they were so drunk was because they kind of drunk themselves into a stupor through the kind of anxiety of being chosen. I think that actually works quite nicely. And I think that it gives us something to work with, because I think socially you can kind of just work out through people's body language who's going and who's not, right? Because perhaps we see that there are some people in the room being commiserated by some pretty happy people who are overjoyed to not be the ones on the boat when it leaves. And like, I think this is fairly easy to do. I think we can identify the half dozen or so people who have been selected just through their body language. Like, Gideon is good at this. He knows how to read a room. And in addition, I think those that have been chosen have something on them, the credentials. They have these kind of leather-bound kind of notebook / ledger things, like a little book, that we can assume, we see like 6 people holding these, and we can assume that they have the credentials in them. That's where the details are. So we have to find one of these people, isolate them, and steal those credentials. Now, the clock is ticking, but we also rolled up a complication, and I was thinking that I want to perhaps not make that complication specific to the voyage and the credentials, because I have an idea for something else. So bear with me. So Gideon does a circuit of the room, and he's trying as hard as he can to listen in on people's conversations and kind of get a read on the vibe, figure out what's going on and who is going. And as a skilled social chameleon, like, he manages to do like that quite easily, to figure out who is going. And also at the same time, do so in a way to not get kind of drawn into conversations that would like blow his cover. And I think, thankfully for him, what helps him in this is that, like, the people that aren't selected, like the lucky ones, they're really hitting the free bar, right, to celebrate. So no one is actually paying him that much attention. And as he looks around, he can't really see anyone isolated on their own who might make an easy target. But what he does see is a pair of people who are stood separately. They're kind of right behind that lectern, in the like kind of in the stained glass window, and there is an older man and a younger woman, and they both look understandably worried, but also locked in tense conversation. Like, Gideon can see well enough that the woman is holding her ledger in her hand, and he can also see the older man has his ledger kind of stuffed kind of in his inside jacket pocket. He has his hands on the woman's shoulders, and Gideon kind of assumes, probably quite rightly, that the older man is trying to reassure the younger woman. Gideon moves a little closer to investigate further, and he kind of tags on to this group who are all kind of sharing celebratory cigars that are being handed out on these silver platters. Gideon kind of helps himself to one and accepts a light and stands there puffing away, trying to eavesdrop. And it's really loud in there, but he can clearly hear the man, who has this kind of rugged face with this really bright red beard, and he is telling this younger woman that it is a great honor to have been selected for this voyage, and that this woman shouldn't be worried. But the woman, who has this kind of very pale, kind of porcelain-like skin, which is maybe even paler due to the shock of being selected, and she has this kind of short, kind of white bob. She's clearly not seeing it this way. She's not seeing it as an honor. And I think that this could be Gideon's best shot. This could be, his best shot at getting credentials. But something distracts him momentarily. Like I said, this room, this kind of hall, this lodge is adorned with all sorts of ancient charts and maps. And one of them catches Gideon's eye. Is just to the left of the stained glass window. And it's smaller than some of the others hung on the wall. It's kind of less obvious. It's less assuming. It's certainly less detailed. It's very faded. The lines are barely even there. And on closer inspection, it appears to depict an archipelago. an island chain. The text is in a language that Gideon is not familiar with, and an ancient script that doesn't make a great deal of sense. But what drew him is the peculiar shape of this archipelago. It's almost spiral-like, looking a little bit like a coiled serpent. And if you tilt your head to the angle that Gideon's is tilted at right now, it bears an uncanny resemblance to his tattoo. And I think that's another mark on the old background vow. So I think that is some valuable insight. So we're up to 1.25 boxes out of 10. Whatever this tattoo on Gideon's wrist is, it seems to bear a striking similarity to an island chain, somewhere we can assume is in the Sundered Isles, which is certainly something. And he is about to try and get a closer look when there is this kind of rapping at the window, and it's Lorenzo, and he's giving Gideon the hurry up because the clock really is ticking. He needs these credentials and he needs to make his move now. He is slightly rattled actually at the sight of that map, but he moves over to the pair at the window. He doesn't know what he's going to do, but he has to do it now. And this is going to be a move. And that move is, once again, face danger, which says when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. This is definitely going to be with deception, stealth, or trickery. And I'm going to kind of bring out the big guns, which is our scoundrel asset, which says when you make a move by lying, bluffing, or crucially stealing, add +2. So let's face danger, rolling, plus shadow. That asset is supposed to be OP, but not when I really need it, I guess. On a weak hit, you succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move -1. So I think Gideon goes in hot, and he kind of pretends to bump into these two. And he's also sort of still looking at the map, so it kind of looks natural that he's distracted by something and he's accidentally done this. He's done so much pickpocketing in his life that he's basically elevated this to an art form, and it's almost kind of disturbing how easy he makes it look. He backs into the man and spins around, sending his drink everywhere. He drops his cigar, and before the man can react, Gideon has taken the handkerchief from the woman's jacket pocket and is using it to wipe down the man, apologising profusely, straightening his jacket and causing enough of a fuss that no one noticed him switching the wet handkerchief with the woman for the ledger that she held in her hands until seconds ago. I think Gideon could probably have taken either of their credentials. This was so smooth. And Gideon is kind of making more apologies and straightening out the situation when something catches his eye through the stained glass window. It's a flash of light. A flash of light that is quickly followed by a deafening boom. And as the boom hits, the window bearing the insignia of the griffin shakes and shatters, sending Gideon and the two people sprawling backwards in a glittering shower of broken glass. Lorenzo, who was on the balcony, had dived for cover, and he pulls himself up to the rail of the window. There is now a plume of smoke rising from the keep that is at the centre of Crown Falls. Gideon gets to his feet and sees it also. He may have sent the dock workers off to cause a distraction, but he knows almost instinctively what this explosion was. This is Felicity causing a bigger distraction. The ledger is on the floor behind him, and he kind of scoops it up without anyone noticing. And as the other attendees of this soiree flock to the window for a better look, he leaves with haste. We do need to make a suffer move. I think it will be a hit to our momentum, because I think this is a slight kibosh on our plan. So I think that's appropriate. So that's back down to 2. Our momentum is crucially in the toilet, so that's good. But we do have the credentials for Finn, which is a vital resource, so counts as progress. So we are up to 6 out of 10. We are trucking. Okay. So I keep saying, and I've kept saying throughout this episode, that time is of the essence. And it really is. We need to book it out of here. Like, the explosion at the keep was so big that everyone in the Hangman's Quarter is spilling out onto the streets to look. And Gideon kind of fights his way through a crowd and sees Finn is already on the move up ahead. Now, the panicked chatter among the folks on the street is that the explosion was at the jail, right? But Gideon doesn't have time to stop and figure anything else out. Like, Finn is wildly gesticulating for him to follow. And as the realization is dawning on everyone that if it was an explosion at the jail, like, that's really bad, right? And that feeling is kind of underlined by the fact that we see kind of groups of town militia swarming towards the keep, kind of pushing their way through the crowd, screaming for everyone to get indoors and out of harm's way. And Gideon stops momentarily as Lorenzo catches up with him and scampers up onto his shoulder. And Lorenzo kind of picks some glass out of Gideon's hair, and they share a concerned look. If this was Felicity, and like he knows it had to be, and this was in fact at the jail, then very soon the streets will be flooded with escaped prisoners who will probably want to get out of Crown Falls, and the most obvious way out of Crown Falls is the docks. Cinder is bright in the sky. There will be blood on the streets tonight. Finn catches sight of Gideon pausing from the alleyway across the street as another group of militia kind of come running past. And we are going to have to even more so keep to the shortcuts and the alleyways to get to the docks if we don't want to get caught up in this mess. And crucially get like kind of rounded up by the cops. So we're going to have to make a move. And once again, I think this is going to be face danger, which again says when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. And we are straight up hustling, right? This is going to be with speed and mobility and agility. This is a race. But there are so many parts at play contributing to this chaos. There is the militia, there is the prisoners now, there is the Circle of Silent Hands and their devotants, the automatons, there's Felicity, and also, like I said, possibly vampires. So, like, all these things are in play, and we have to navigate that chaos to get to the docks. We have to get Finn on the boat and find Felicity. So, yeah, we need to move at pace, because, like I said, any prisoners who may have gotten out, they're also going to be headed for the docks. I'm not sure at this moment what Gideon's out is. Like, Finn is trying to board an incredibly dangerous expedition, but Gideon, not so much. Like, I guess we'll figure it out when we get there, I guess. But anyway, let's face danger. I like the idea that Finn is up ahead. And I think that they are kind of almost like cutting a path through the streets. And we're sort of just kind of following behind, trying to keep up. Kind of, they were way out ahead of us. And I don't think we have time to kind of stop and regroup. So we're going to just have to kind of get there with Finn doing a lot of the kind of heavy lifting. And because Finn is a connection, we can use their connection bonus, which says whenever your connection aids you on a move closely associated with their role, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. So let's face danger, rolling plus edge. That is a strong hit. On a strong hit, you are successful. Take +1 momentum. And with the +1 momentum from Finn's bonus, that is our momentum back up to 4. So let's envision this. It is chaos. There is so much happening. Like, Gideon nearly loses Finn several times as they twist and turn their way through the streets of Crown Falls, and Finn constantly looks back to check on Gideon to see if he's keeping pace, but they can't afford to stop, so they just have to trust him to make it. They pass several militia patrols, but it is obvious that there is chaos and confusion in their ranks because they are reacting and responding to several threats all at once, and you can tell that the rank and file are panicked. But Finn is relentless in how they are getting them through this. As they all turn down one particularly dark alleyway, Gideon looks ahead and sees a flash of steel. And then as he catches up, he has to step over 2 bodies that Finn has just skillfully dropped. They're the bodies of prisoners, judging from the grey overalls that they are wearing. But Gideon doesn't have time to stop and investigate further. He needs to keep up with Finn. As they turn out onto a street where a huge scrum has made the way impassable, Gideon is forced to follow Finn up a fire escape to the rooftops. And as they hop perilously between buildings, the view they are afforded allows Gideon to see the utter devastation at the jail. There is thick black smoke rising from a gaping hole in the side of the keep. Fire rages, and in the street below he can see a wall of town militia trying to hold back a tide of escaping prisoners, and spoiler alert, they are not doing a good job of it. Gideon looks back at Finn, who is already nimbly hopping between buildings up ahead, but the danger of jumping the gaps between the buildings isn't what's worrying Gideon most right now. He is agile enough to keep up. What's worrying him most is the shifting shadow that he sees trailing them on the corresponding buildings on the other side of the street. It seems to follow their every move. There, then not there. And then the sound of screeching bats intermittently cuts through the sound of the carnage in the streets. But they do make it. They make it to the docks, and it takes about 25 exhausting non-stop minutes of parkour to get to the huge gatehouse that leads to the docks. But this, like everything else, is ruined. These huge, heavy oak doors hang off their hinges, and thick smoke and the sound of gunfire can be heard through the archway. Gideon doesn't have time to soak it in before he finds himself following Finn into the smoke and the chaos. We are at the docks. We got across the city. This is clearly overcoming an obstacle. So that's progress. So we are up now to 8 out of 10. And I think because we guess this is where Felicity is going to be, and we've not set a trap for her, but like we've certainly engineered this situation. Well, some of it. If we knew that she would blow up the jail, then we probably wouldn't have started a dock worker uprising. Although what we have learned from these episodes is labour rights are very important and worth fighting for. But anyway, I think the fact that we're now there and Felicity is probably here, I think that's progress. So up to 7 out of 10. And I think, you know, we've been on this Val now for like 7 episodes, I think, or 6 episodes. This is about as good as it's going to get, right? Like, and before I think I describe what's going on at the docks, I think we probably should fulfill that first vow to get Phil on the boat, because that might inform what else is going on. So to fulfill a vow, that's a move, which is conveniently enough called Fulfill Your Vow. It's a progress move, which says when you reach the end of your quest, roll the challenge dice and compare to your progress. We are at 8 progress, so in pretty good shape. So let's give this a go. That's a miss. On a miss, your vow is undone through an unexpected complication or realization. Envision what happens and choose one. We get to either give up on the quest and forsake our vow, or recommit to the quest, which is a whole other headache. That is no good. Frankly, that's not good at all. I can't use momentum to help that dice roll in any way, even though our momentum's 4 or whatever. It wouldn't have helped anyway. I wonder whether we should also try and fulfill the vow to find Felicity, and then we can envision this like all together. We are in desperate need of a positive result here. So we have a progress of 7. So let's fulfill our vow to find Felicity Devereaux, rolling against a progress of 7. Jesus Christ. A miss with a match. Well, I think before we get into it, we should probably do the second part of the fulfill your vow move, the one we did to Finn anyway. We're going to have to forsake our vow here. It says, when you renounce your quest, betray your promise, or the gold is lost to you, clear the vow. That vow's now gone. Then envision the impact of this failure and choose one or more as appropriate to the nature of the vow. And there is a little list here. And the two that jump out at me are someone else pays a price. Envision how a person, being, or community bears the cost of the failure, and someone else takes advantage. Envision how an enemy gains power. These two options both make sense with what's going on. And I think the fact that we just rolled a miss and a miss for the match, choosing two options is appropriate to how just dreadful this situation is. As for the specifics of Felicity, well, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, in terms of like what we're going to do with the vow. And that bridge, when we do come to it, I'm sure will be covered in shit and on fire. But anyway, let's picture the scene at the docks and tie this all together. So Gideon forces his way through the smoke. He's kind of keeping low. He can hear screams. He can hear gunfire in all directions. He stumbles forward and sees Finn crouching behind some crates. There are bodies scattered everywhere. Dock workers, militia, all laid out in the dozens. And he finally catches up with Finn, tumbling into cover. And Lorenzo is there whimpering his little hands over his little monkey ears as he tries to block out the sounds of destruction going on all around him. Finn points off into the distance, and now they can see the Griffin Academy ship, which needs a name. So let's hit the oracles. 1 sec. 60 is Perilous Venture. I mean, oracles, that's a little on the nose, shall we say. Okay, but fine. Let's see what emblem it has. Its emblem on its mast is 79, a tree. Okay, through the gloom and the fire and the shifting smoke, at one end of the dock, we can see a vessel surrounded by frantic activity. The mast displays this mighty oak tree surrounded by rays of yellow light against a dark blue background. There are workers loading this thing with all sorts of equipment, and there are armed guards watching over them at the end of the gangplank. And crucially, these are not Crown Falls town militia, but they are some sort of private security, and they are clinically executing anyone who gets close looking to cause trouble. Gideon looks back towards the gatehouse and can see figures in dark grey overalls starting to emerge as escaped prisoners start to spill into the docks. Looking for a way out of here, he looks to the opposite end of the dock to see the only other vessel here, the submersible warship, which is now mostly visible as the scaffolding is kind of almost all gone, and I think there are still people kind of working busily to deconstruct it, and it's kind of starting to fall away. And it looks like it is also getting ready for departure. And now he's getting a closer look at it. He can see that it's huge. It's dark green in colour. And as the pieces of the scaffolding fall away into the water, he can see that it is heavily armed. It's a gunship, but it doesn't have cannons protruding from hatches. It has huge metal cannons built into the side of this thing's great metal hull. Gideon is almost in awe of this thing, and he almost instinctively gets up and starts to move towards it in the opposite direction of where Finn needs to be. He needs to see it up close. He needs to know it's being prepared to launch because he knows Felicity must be up there. But as he gets up, Finn pulls him back down into cover as musket fire fizzes overhead. And Gideon is suddenly aware of himself again. He swore a vow, and he can now see it done. And he digs the credentials out of his jacket and goes to hand them to Finn, whose hand is outstretched and ready. But then Finn is suddenly jerked away as they are violently pulled off the ground and into the air. Gideon staggers back to see an automaton with Finn painfully skewered through the shoulder by one of its metallic, scythe-like arms. Gideon cries out in horror and reaches out for them, managing to get a hand on their cloak. But the automaton launches Finn away into the smoke and the gloom, leaving Gideon holding the cloak, and in it, the crown. He goes for his pistol for all the good it will do against this thing, but the automaton isn't interested in him. The Devotants following this great mechanical construct are here, and they are commanding it towards the submersible. Gideon has lost all sight of Finn and tries to find them, weaving his way through what has become a battlefield, bodies everywhere. He ducks into cover again, Lorenzo scampering in to join him. He peers out to see a group of people boarding the submersible. He only sees the last of this contingent as they disappear through the metallic hatch on the hull. Whoever they are, they were dressed in a very strange military uniform, the likes of which he has never seen. Jet black tunics with heavily armoured plates on the chest and shoulders. And he watches as they disappear. And then he also watches as a couple of brave, or the most fervent, Devotants make it up onto the submersible. And as they do, someone emerges from the hatch. It's a woman, cloaked, but with a telltale wisp of auburn hair clearly visible even through all this smoke and destruction. It's her. Gideon watches Felicity rear back, her metal fist glinting through the gloom, and she brings it to bear with horrifying force, a punch sending the first Devotant clean off their feet and cartwheeling into the water below. As the next Devotant tries to strike a blow with their mighty axe, she puts her hand up to protect herself. The haft of the axe just buckles and bends around it. She then uppercuts the Devotant with such force their head snaps back with a sickening crunch. They collapse in a heap, and Felicity pushes their lifeless corpse off the ship and into the water. She straightens her hood and then disappears into the hatch, spins the handle closed behind her. The submersible begins to fire up, and the water around it boils. The fighting on the dock between the dock workers and the militia is over, but the Devotants that are still coming head towards the submersible, preparing whatever projectile weapons they have to try and stop this thing. At the other end of the dock, prisoners are heading towards the perilous venture, the only other ship here, the only means they have of escaping Crown Falls. Gideon watches on, as with a mighty metallic yawn, the top of the submersible pivots towards the dock. Two main cannons trained on the Devotants. And then it belches an almighty plume of smoke, and then the gatehouse and all of the Devotants rushing through it are consumed in a blazing inferno of blue flame. Stone and wood and flesh erupt into the air as Gideon and Lorenzo dive for cover. He gets to his feet to see the ship pulling away, and the turret rotates again, this time towards the centre of the dock. He gets up and runs in the only available direction to the other end of the dock and to the perilous venture. The planks of the dock are collapsing beneath him, but he has to keep running. He can see the armed guards at the gangplank of the perilous venture mercilessly gunning down prisoners trying to rush the ship. He is caught between two variations of the same certain death. He just needs to get to cover and hopefully he can survive. And then he feels himself being lifted off the ground, spinning into the air. And he sees blue flames envelop him, and then everything goes dark. Gideon Finch awakens in an unfamiliar room. He's in a bunk bed he doesn't recognise. The room is wood-panelled with a desk in the centre on which Lorenzo is curled up asleep. His fur is a little singed, but generally he looks okay. Gideon is still wearing the outfit from the Navigator's Lodge, tattered and torn. Also on the desk is the cloak in which is wrapped the head of the King of Tides, with the crown still attached. He swings his legs around and gets to his feet. He's unsteady. He feels stiff. Every inch of his body aches. And then he immediately feels something he does not like. He begins to panic. He runs to the door and leaves the room. Gideon's worst nightmare has come true. He is standing on the deck of a ship in the middle of the ocean. He looks overboard and sees no land in sight in any direction. The mast of the ship, bearing a mighty oak, takes the wind as the perilous venture cuts through the waves. And he starts to get a sense of his surroundings and understand the predicament he is in. And as he does that, he starts to piece together what has happened. He feels the pocket of his jacket and the leather ledger inside. He takes it out and reads. He then looks up and notices one more thing. The crew, to a man, are all saluting him. Gideon Finch is stranded on a ship, sailing across the Ember Strait towards the cursed Isle of Navini. He has the Crown of Tides in his possession. No Finn, no Felicity. And according to the documentation he stole from the Navigator's lodge, he's the captain. He returns to what he now realises is his cabin. Lorenzo sits up and yawns. And Gideon says, "Okay, don't panic. But we might be in real trouble." Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you've not done so already, and click the little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next time, but until then, it is farewell and safe passage.